But our first story today. How often are you out somewhere and you see a baby crying and that helpless father or mother gives the baby a phone or an iPad so that they stop crying, so that they stay transfixed? Today, mothers and fathers have to work, they have to raise their kids at the same time, and sometimes you just need a quick fix to just calm your crying child down. Well, a growing school of thought is now arguing that putting your kids, especially your 1 to 4-year-olds, in front of screens for too long, in front of their favorite content for hours, that can actually really harm them. One is obviously the issue of too much exposure. So when you have a little baby looking at screens for too long, experts say it can cause developmental delays. So in areas like problem solving, communication skills. But there's another aspect to this story, not just being in front of screens, but the kind of content that's being put in front of them. Over the last few years, a kids show, Cocomelon, has been in a big soup. You can find Cocomelon videos. So if you just type it into YouTube, for example, you'll find it. And they're these very colorful, very upbeat videos. They've racked hundreds of millions of views. We're not kidding, 400 million views. And they seem like, just from the outset, the perfect kids content because it's cheery, it's loud, it's happy. So why are thousands of parents across the world up in arms? They're arguing that shows like Cocomelon that are aimed at kids as young as 1 or 2 are deliberately designed to be addictive. Parents are saying everything from the frame rate, the scene changes that are taking place quickly, all of that, the bright colors, everything is designed to be overstimulating to even addle a baby's mind. Now, on TVC, we like to get to the bottom of every problem and find a solution. So we thought we'd start by having a developmental psychologist with us on the show today. Saisha Sawhney is with us to understand and explain to us this entire issue in depth. Saisha, thank you so much for joining us here on TVC. So Saisha, tell us the first question. You work very closely with young kids starting from the age of 2, 3, 4, 5, right, all the way up to 15, 16, 17. Yes. Just tell us, how common is this as just an issue that you're seeing around you of parents giving their kids a screen to quell them? Are you seeing rising rates and this question of kids potentially becoming addicted? That's the word that's being used. Is there a rise in numbers that you're seeing?
So, to put it shortly, yes, there is a rise in numbers, and ever since COVID-19, the pandemic, it has become more common to see screens in the hands of kids from the ages of 2 up to the ages of 18, right? Because at that point it became normalized to have a screen in front of you for school. So that being said, I do sympathize with parents because it's very difficult to sort of at the age of 2 or 3 understand how to adequately engage your child, right? So every parent's situation is different, you know, but I have seen that giving a phone or giving an iPad, kids now even are very adept at using iPads. They don't even need to be taught. If there's an iPad lying in front of them, oftentimes you'll see a child going and open YouTube and like playing something just by themselves. Yeah. And they've just learnt it. They've been born into it. So it's something that is also happening to them. It's also happening to these kids. But then the role of the parents comes in where, you know, you sort of have to monitor how much is being given.
That's the big question.
Yeah.
So we wanted to ask you this, that how do you discern when your baby's hooked to something? Especially, we're talking babies. So with a baby, what are the telltale signs that it's hooked? What does hooked actually look like when you're that young?
So I would say, okay, so being a child of 2 or 3, right? What usually a child would do is go outdoors and play, or find toys, find things to, like a book to read or something to draw. If you see a lower interest in these type of activities in your child, that could be a telltale sign. Another thing is if a child is on a screen, they have a phone in front of them or they have an iPad, and you happen to walk in and say, okay, it's lunchtime, and you take away the iPad. If that child has an adverse response where they become irritable or they become angry, that could be a telltale sign. Because ideally, you know, it should be the same as taking a book away from a child, right? Where they're not, it's nothing that they find too irritating, basically.
But that sign, is for example, if the baby makes a sound, is that enough of a sign, or you're saying crying?
No, they could literally crying or yelling or screaming or shouting, throwing a tantrum, saying, no, I want to watch the screen right now, all of these things. They could get angry with the parents. Another sign could be that they could have a lack of sleep, at night. If the child is seeing the screen at night to fall asleep, that could be an issue. At school, there could be increased irritability with other children, distractibility, they're not being able to focus in preschool or school. And outdoor activity. If the outdoor activity has decreased and the child shows no interest in going outdoors, playing, that could also be something that you can look out for.
So we like to say that on TPC we like to look at solutions, and so we're going to ask you that next. What can parents do? Number one, and I'll ask you this part by part, if they're trying to change the behavior of a baby who is getting irritated, so they're seeing these kind of signs and parents want to do something differently, what can they do?
So again, I'd like to say that start as young as possible, because screen time is something that even an 18-month-old, gets introduced to. So you can start by sort of designating spaces in the home that you allow screens in. So say, don't allow them in your child's bedroom. And allow means if you set a precedent at a younger age, the child is more likely to follow that through till they are 5, 6 to 10 years old, right? If you are telling them you cannot watch the screen now, maybe try to tell them when can you, if you're give them an option. Always have, okay, this is not something you can do, what else can you do, right? So having a space in the home where they can play, even if it's a small space, have all of their coloring books, their reading books, some games, board games, everything, have it in one area so that the child knows that it's accessible and they can go and play independently, right? So they don't need to come and ask you. And so having a space, having a time, having a set time. When say they come back from school, they're very tired, they eat a meal, and you give them 1 hour at that point. You say, okay, now this is your screen time, and maybe a little bit extra on the weekends. You give 2 to 3 hours, right? It's just that setting a precedent at an early age will make it an autonomous process when they are older. Especially, I feel like just on meal times, meal times become a huge issue because a lot of the time children don't like eating vegetables or they have very specific wants, and parents tend to put a screen in front of them. Now it's natural, right? Like, I'm speaking from a point of view where I'm not a parent. So I understand that there are different restrictions and different things you have to take care of, and sometimes you do. But putting a screen in front of a child at the age of, say, 18 months when they are eating something distracts them completely. They are not able to focus on what they are eating, they're just looking at the screen, which might be your aim, but that connection gets lost. Because you have to understand, you have to pay attention to what's happening in the moment, especially at that age. You're forming new neural connections. So at important times like that, try not to use a screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
So lastly, I just want to ask you, many of our audiences may be wondering, a developmental psychologist, what role is there when a kid is 1, 2, 3? And you use something called play therapy for younger kids.
Right.
What does that look like? What is it?
So as the word suggests, I play with the kids, and essentially what play therapy could look like, there are different kinds. Constructive play therapy could be like art therapy, using different art mediums to help the child. Could be fantasy, you make a fantasy world with the child just by using words. You're on a spaceship or you're wherever else, The point of play therapy is to help the children with their coping mechanisms. So say there is a child that has ADHD, right? And they usually, sometimes what happens is they have different sensory needs. So with play therapy and through constructive play, we can make sure that they are trying out different sort of sensory objects like atta or sand, or we'll make sort of a messy play pit and have them just feel some of these things so that they can explore more, right? Movement therapy, something like dance, something like football, it just gives a child a way to understand that they can use this.
So we engage them
We
entirely.
engage them, yeah.
Thank you so much, Saisha, for taking out time and joining us here. Okay, so we heard right now from a developmental psychologist, and that was particularly important because we wanted to understand how you can sit with younger children especially. But let's move on right now from this. We wanted to hear from more voices on this entire story. A leader in philanthropy, we spoke to Mohandas Pai on TBC. Not only obviously is he the chairman of the Manipal Global Education Services, he's a man behind India's largest school midday meal program and many more similar initiatives. He's also a parent in his own right. He says it's something he's dealt with. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on TBC this morning. Sir, question one for you. This entire story, we're telling our audiences it starts with Cocomelon, which is a YouTube series online. What do you think of this? This almost spiral we're seeing that's taking place with younger children.
Yes, I think, you see, most of this content which is put there online is deliberately done to increase addiction and to get people coming back. There are a lot of psychologists, a lot of money going into research to make sure that people get addicted, the storyline, how it is done, the words, how they're chosen, etc. So I think these people are also doing the same thing and getting children addicted. Now, it's very important for society to understand what these people are doing and to make sure that we drop some norms and test them out before they are released. It is not censorship, but we have to take care of our children. It has got to be age appropriate.
Sir, research is also saying kids are missing their developmental goals. We just discussed that because of screen addiction, sir. What do you think?
Yes, that is true. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Because today there's a lot of research that happens. People spend a lot of money on the research. Advertising agencies do that. Independent agencies do that. Because what do they want? They want eyeballs to stick. They want more and more viewers. They want more and more time for the viewers to do. And for the children part, how much time the child spends, what does the child do, etc. That's why parents have to be very careful nowadays. They must not let the children play with their mobile phones. They must not let the children see too much of videos. They must not put on too much of the TV and other things to do. Because most children today are very busy and they want to have their own time. So they want to get rid of the child going and asking for attention. So they put on all this stuff and the children get addicted. Earlier, 15, 20 years back, I didn't see any of this.
Right. But sir, do you think part of the challenge is also that young parents are struggling with actually finding good quality content that keeps their babies engaged?
See, the biggest challenge for humanity today and for young families is the time that parents can spend with the children. We got nuclear families. They don't have grandparents or immediate family who to spend time. So they have to spend time. They're very harassed. They're very stressed out, long working hours. They're very tired. They don't have time for children. Many of them are not even having children or having one child. So there's a societal problem all over, what people try to call work-life balance, etc. Because of the stress that is there in society, the competitive spirit, the need to earn more money. And children become a casualty because you don't have enough time to spend with children. And of course, many people also send them out to play schools and keep them all busy where somebody looks after them, etc. That's all fine. But parental oversight of children is very essential when they're growing up.
Sir, thank you so much for joining us here, for giving us your views, your thoughts, taking out time in the morning. Let's move on. Look, on TBC, we love to also look at what solutions look like. We've spent a little time discussing what you can't do. Let's look now at what you can do. One person working closely on solutions for the entire country is Preeti Vyas. She's the president, the CEO of Amar Chitra Katha and Tinkle Comics Studio. Let's go over to her to understand more about their plans to solve this question. Ma'am, let's just start with a simpler question. For you, what's the line between liking something and perhaps getting addicted to it? Content, for example.
So I think all content, whether it is books, whether it is music, whether it is shows on TV, everything there is a case for a parent to moderate. It's not that let my child express themselves and explore. No, it's a parent's job until the child reaches an age where they can make their own mind to choose and to curate whatever they're consuming, whether it is food, whether it is content, whether it is their friends. We do that as parents. That's like the basic job of being a parent. So especially when it comes to really young children, like you mentioned, the 2 to 4, I mean, they're like sponges. They absorb everything that comes to them. So it's you have to be very, very careful what you're putting up in front of them. And luckily, we live in an age of the internet where so much guidance is available. Like a non-profit like commonsensemedia.org will tell you specifically what age, what is appropriate, what is not. You just have to go out and do that little bit of research on your own to find out. For example, with really young children, very fast-paced content, right? Or very fast-paced visuals do harm them, do harm the brain. And that should be avoided at all costs. Whether it's very fast-paced or whether sometimes things masquerading as good, but it's actually got some violence built into it, or the language might not be good. Some of the shows have really bad language. You don't want your child to watch that. So that is the parent's job, that is the teacher's job, that is the educationer's job to figure that out.
So at Amar Chitra Khatha, you've launched series for much, much younger children now. Obviously, most adults watching this associate you with, 7 to 12, but now you've got a much younger series too. Tell us, how are decisions made for that younger series editorially? How do you make something exciting for young kids?
So it's part art, there's also part science, because there's so much research being done in the world of child development now that we know that at what age, what is the capacity, or what is it that the child is able to consume. For example, we know that newborn babies do not have a full sense of the color spectrum. They respond best to, black and white, black, white, and red, perhaps. So that's why you have books for newborns with just black and white in them, right? With really strong visuals. And so on and so forth as you get older, in terms of the kind of language you would use, right? So an early reader or a book aimed at a 3 to 6-year-old, you would not use words with 2 vowels in the same sentence, in the same word. Right, so things like that, which have come out of research done by experts in the field, which guide us. The Lexile score, as it's called. What's a Lexile score that you would use for each age group? You would refer to those things. That's the science part. The art part is, of course, the kind of color you would use, the kind of images that you would use. For younger children, you use more rounded edges. You'd always see characters aimed at younger children. For example, a Bob the Builder or a Mickey Mouse. You'd always see them having a larger face and a smaller body. Right, and as the child grows, the characters also become more adult-like. Right, the proportions change. So all these things are researched; they are done. They already exist, and then a lot of it comes from our own characters, our own mythology, our own history. The way we've been depicting Ganesha, for example. Ganesha is a much-loved character. Right, he's always been a favorite god or a Krishna. The way you would depict them would be very different for a 4-year-old versus you would depict it for a 10-year-old.
We have to ask you, how affected is your editing team, the creators, by the fact that they almost have to compete, if I could use that word, against these very engaging YouTube videos, TV shows? How do they feel?
Yeah, we don't actually look at actively competing with YouTube videos, right? Because the value that a book will bring into the child's life is far superior, in my opinion, right? If you have a much loved book, you will go back and read it. Every parent will say, every parent who has a child who's been a book lover or from a young age will have a much tattered book, right? A book which has been thumbed through like hundreds of times, or the same story you have to read out to the child every night. Why? Because the child feels a sense of actually confidence growing. When you can predict what's going to happen in the story, you know what's happening next, that sense of confidence, of connection, of relatability. There's some research just done that almost 70% of a child's dreams under the age of 5 comprise of animals.
Wow.
Right? So there is, it's very, very deep. And I think that the value that a book will bring into the child's life is far superior than what a video would do. And like you rightly said, a video is, it's very passive, right? Because you're not engaging any of your own senses and your own imagination. You're just watching something which is given to us. Whereas a book is very active because you're actively involved in that story, right? You're actually involved in what is going on and you're making your own imagination. You're filling in. Even in a comic book, you're seeing 2 frames, but there's something happening between the 2 frames which your brain is filling in, right? And one frame you see the king sitting on a throne, and the next frame he's in a battlefield. So you know that he's gone and he's jumped onto his horse. That connection your brain is making. So those are the important things that you want the child to learn. And that only comes through books.
So there's a lot of Western special content. You talked a little bit about Indian mythology, but do you want to see more Indian content that's made aimed at early age kids? Do you think that there's a gap in the market?
Right? Like I said at the very beginning, it's not that all shows are bad. It's not that all screen time is bad. These are very thoughtfully made shows designed by, child development experts with that age group in mind. And if you look at them, they all have a very common thread. There is beautiful music, very, very melodious music. In fact, In the Night Garden is a show to watch. It helps kids even go to sleep because it ends with a lullaby every time, right? So a certain kind of melodious music, well-paced music, visuals moving at a certain pace and not very fast-paced for that age, right? Very simple storylines, a lot of repetitiveness of characters, of places, of themes. This is what makes a small child at that age feel very comfortable, feel engaged, and feel confident. These things, and so we haven't seen that much coming out of India, right, in terms of that age group.
Right.
For that age group. It's a combination of factors. There's a whole commerce aspect of it. You can't advertise on those shows, so there's not much funding available. That's a different conversation. But yes, if you were to ask me what is it that children need in terms of shows, that's the kind of material they would need, right? Shows which are made in consultation with people who have devoted their entire lives to child development studies and to say what is it that can really enrich, what is the nourishing content for my child. Forget about being not bad. What can nourish the child? Exactly like food. There could be something which is junk, something which is not bad, and something which is actually nourishing. What can be that spinach for my child?
Preeti, thank you. You guys are clearly working on creating one kind of spinach, one kind of kale for young children. Thank you for doing what you do. Okay.